He's Jim Jackson, Fox Turner NBA, also college basketball analyst, joining us on the program. I've just spent a little time reminiscing about guys who missed their window. You know, when Bird and Magic came in, and then Mike came in, and the bad boy. You know, anybody before that, Kareem, I think got short-sighted a little bit. Dr. J did, and I got a chance to see Doc play twice in the ABA, and
Oh, wow.
it was just different. He was playing against the Kentucky Colonels, who had Dan Issel and had a really, really good. Artis Gilmore was on the team, and Doc was just dunking on people in traffic. Like, it was like wild, and I had not seen somebody play like that. Have you met Dr. J?
Yes. Yeah, that was ironically, I grew up a Sixers fan because of Doc. Now, I'm from Ohio, but it was close to Philly. So I grew up idolizing the fro, and it was moving. I wanted to try to have an afro like Dr. J. And, at that time, too, that NBA Finals, I think when they played the Magic his rookie year, that thing was on tape delay back in the day. Remember that? But I met Doc at the 95 All-Star game in Phoenix. I still have that picture. And that was like that moment when you see Dr. J walk in the room, he was like gliding and, in slow motion. It was like that's Doc. But then, Dan, I got to really get a chance to know him via the Big Three with Ice Cube's league, because he's one of the coaches. But more importantly, we were in China with the NBA China games in 2018. That was Luka's rookie year. And Doc was there. And we really had a chance to just hang out and spend time, because he's an avid, like me, cigar smoker. So I would make sure that I have a place set up that we go to that we can sit and smoke and talk. And he was telling stories. He was with the Atlanta Hawks in camp. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And think about it. They wouldn't let him play.
Yeah.
Think about that, Dan. If he would have stayed with the Hawks, how history could have been different. Because he was with the Virginia Squires at the time.
Virginia Squires, yeah.
Yeah, and then went to Atlanta. He was in camp. The NBA said, if Doc plays, you have to forfeit the games that he plays in. And that's how he ended up getting to the New Jersey Nets and eventually, of course, to the Philadelphia 76ers. But spending time with him, man, it's a different – it's something about – people have aura, and Doc definitely is that person that has it.
I was covering the NBA Finals with the Bulls and the Jazz. We were in Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim Gray says, when you get done with SportsCenter stuff, you want to join me and Doc. We're going to be playing golf. And I'm like, I'm there. And so we get there. We're playing golf, and then there's a backup on like the 15th hole. And there was a basketball hoop. There was a house right behind the tee box. And there was a basketball out there. And I said, Doc, you want to go shoot? So we went over in golf shoes, and so I'm shooting hoops. And I said, Doc, would you stand under? I'd lowered the basket to, I think, 8 feet. And I said, would you stand under the hoop? I want to dunk on you. Doc went and stood under the hoop and put his hands up, and then I dunked on him.
What?
Yeah, how cool is that?
I'm just more surprised you still got up on the 8-foot rim. What do you mean?
I was putting on an aerial display, man.
Hey, listen, I played Doc. We played, we're at Big Three. We played golf in Tulsa, and I love Doc to death. And I tell you how smooth he is, and everything is melodic and everything. But sometimes he can be slow on the golf course too, though. Takes his time on the golf course.
Yes, he wasn't a great golfer.
All right.
As a golfer, he was a great dunker. So I love what Giannis has brought up. Well, we brought it up a while ago, and that's everybody outside the United States versus the United States in the All-Star game. And I said, well, what do you have to lose? Like we've already lost the All-Star game. Maybe you can get it back. And I certainly like my starting five with the players from outside the United States. What's the negative to this?
The negative to me is that you have to search for a way for guys to play hard and search for incentive to make the game interesting. Because we're going through all this, Dan, the Elon system, captains picking their teams, different iterations of the All-Star game, because it falls back on the players to not really wanting to play and play hard. At the end of the day, when the top players really want to play and you play hard, I'm not saying you're going to go out, 100 miles per hour and try to hurt yourself, but in that second quarter, that third quarter, that fourth quarter, when it's time to compete and you're playing defense. And again, I go back to, the 80s and 90s, 2000s early when the games were played hard. Okay. And it wasn't just a dunk contest. That's what bothers me, that we have to search, or the NBA has to search for reasons to incentivize the players to really go out and play hard. So why are we looking at European players versus United States? Why?
Because we can't get them to play hard.
I know.
Now you play for your country, and if the players, whether team world, beat the Americans, now you have something. Now you have. Oh my goodness! Then the next year, like now we have something. I don't watch the All-Star game because I've said it's a glorified layup line. I don't care. Even the dunk contest, I don't care. 3-point, you can still dress that up.
Yeah, you can dress it up.
WNBA and NBA. You could have prior, like Del Curry and Steph Curry could be a team. You could do something like that, and I'd be fine with that. But this, to me, if the world beat Team USA, I think at least it has a pulse.
Well, how does it? But here's the thing, too. How do you? Will guys get left out because of this? And with regards to the number of players, the number of players too, because if you think about it, if you got 25 players or 24 players, whatever it may be, and now you're looking at placing a European team together, American team, that means you need 12 European players, right? Let's say you got 12 on the bench. 12 on the team.
Yeah.
But ironically, maybe 5 to 8 are your real all-stars. So that means now you're putting another 4 to 5 players that are there that are taking spots from other players who should be all-stars. Okay? So you run into that dynamic too. It sounds great, but when you're voting for the all-star team, you pick the 24, 25 best players, the all-star. Ironically, they're not going to be, the majority are going to be American players. But you have to fill out that roster if it's a European team. And that means on the American side, it's going to be guys that deserve to be an all-star that don't end up making it if you go that way. Now, again, I don't know how the process will be, but I think you have that as something that you really have to look at on how that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do. But I'm just trying to have the All-Star game mean something, and this might be a last-ditched effort. Talking to Jim Jackson, Fox Turner NBA college basketball analyst. The Knicks are 2.5-point underdogs against the Pacers. What happened in that fourth quarter that Indiana forgot to do, or the Knicks, remembered to do?
Well, I think you got to give a lot of credit to the Knicks. It was, of course, Karl Anthony Towns got reactivated. Really played extremely well. And, he played assertive. I thought there was some shots that he took early that kind of built the defense out. But you got to give OG Anunoby credit. He played extremely well. Deuce McBride came in and played extremely well. He had a critical role, in that game in particular in the fourth quarter, not just offensively, but defensively too. Kind of making some things happen. And when you're, in this situation, you play a little desperate, you're down 2-0 on the road. And really, the pressure is kind of more on, even though it's pressure on New York to win it, don't get me wrong, because you go down 3-0, it's basically over. But you're not expected to kind of win that game just based on how the series was going. Even though you think about this, Dan, every game came down to a 1 or 2 possession game. Okay, and that New York probably sat back and said, if we cleaned up what happened in the third quarter, some turnovers, some tough shots, not giving up an offensive rebound, we win those 2 games at home. And that's the mentality you have to have. And other guys really stepped up. Mikal Bridges stepped up big time, made some great defensive plays, offensive plays. And a lot of that was done, Dan, with Jalen Brunson sitting on the bench. Yeah. And that says a lot about the character of that New York team. Now, can it be duplicated? We don't know. But you play hard. You give yourself a chance to win. You don't turn it over. and the ball moved a lot more late in that fourth quarter, the last 5 minutes. That gave New York opportunities to be able to score the ball and eventually win the game.
Yeah, but okay. It's not fair to say it, but it is
Say it.
real. They'll move the ball more with Brunson not ball dominant.
Well, they will.
I'm not,
but
I'm not saying that you win without him,
right.
But it's a different Knicks team or style that they seem to capitalize on. Whether that I still think that Tibbs needs to play more guys. He's stuck on like 6 guys, but you have some guys who have experience and put them in there, and they had to out of necessity with Brunson, but it just felt like the ball moved a little bit more, and they benefited from that.
Well, the last couple of games, too. Well, he went with the change in the starting lineup. Okay, moved Josh Hart back to the bench. He played Landry Shamet, in the game. But here's the thing, because we got a snippet of about 5.5 minutes of no Brunson, right? Yeah. When he left the game in the fourth quarter and came back in with about a minute something left. And everybody's saying, well, it looks better without Brunson. Yeah, but you know what? Brunson was there the bulk of the game to get you to that point. So you can have a snippet of it, but imagine if Brunson is not there for the totality of the game. This is a different New York team. Now you're asking guys to do this for 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes to be able to do what we saw in 5 minutes. That's a different ask. And I agree with you.
Lazy analysis on people's part to say they're
but it makes sense. In
that
some
moment,
aspects.
it made sense.
It made sense.
Yes. It's like when people said the Celtics are better without Tatum.
Stop it.
Yes, exactly. By the way, Tyrese Halliburton's dad's allowed back in the building.
But only in the suite.
Only in the suite.
Nowhere near the court.
Did you ever have a family member create an incident at a game?
No, ever. And I had, I was fortunate. My father, my mother, they were always in the background, never, that's my son out there. I mean, high school, college, and the pro. My relatives who came to the game that were really close to me, they were just so happy and elated to be just in the building a lot of times to be and see other players play, but proud of what I've done. But never even close friends.
Teammate?
No, I never played with a teammate I had some. Did I ever have over the top, let's say, parents or crew? Yeah, maybe a little bit, but not to where it never interfered with the game. Maybe at practices or doing stuff or trying to travel and be at stuff. Yeah, that part, but not what we saw on the court after a game in another player's face. I didn't experience that part.
I like what OKC did, and that is I don't want your best player to beat me. Now, You do run the risk of the other players, and the other players played really well for the Thunder. But Anthony Edwards saying basically I didn't have a bad game. I made the right choices here. Where do you stand on the field goal attempts were limited for the best player on your team?
Well, that's very mature of Anthony Edwards, and it's a correct analysis being this. OKC made it a point, in particular Lou Dort, that Anthony wasn't going to get a lot of airspace. In the previous game, he had a lot of good isolations on the wing. He was able to get one-on-one. But when you're facing this OKC team, think about this. What you want to do, you want to get a mismatch. Everybody wants to figure out a mismatch. So when Anthony Edwards, who initiates the offense, comes down and wants that pick and roll up top with Holmgren or Hartenstein, it's incumbent upon the guy that's guarding Ant to get over that screen. So now you don't have a switch, and you're basically back to one-on-one defense. And that's what Lou Dort did most of the night. He stayed. He got over those screens. So now you don't have a mismatch. And when they did, they loaded up on Ant. So the 13 shots was a result of excellent, one, schematically designing a defense that works. But two, the commitment for OKC players to really execute that scheme. Because you can have a scheme all you want, and coaches will tell you that. They say, listen, we lost this game because we didn't execute our game plan. Well, that wasn't the case for OKC, man. I mean, whoever was in that pick and roll situation or needed to be around Anthony Anderson, they did a heck of a job. And then when he went into traffic, he was double or triple team, and he had to get rid of the ball.
Most annoying defender you ever faced?
Muggsy Bogues. Not even close. Not even, because my second year, I was in Dallas, and we traded Derek Harper, right, to New York. So I'm playing point guard. Man, we play Charlotte, and Muggsy's 5'2" with some insoles in, okay? And he'll pick you up full court, and he gets up underneath you. And the annoying is all. I'm like, man, just here's the ball. I'm gonna get it back over half court. But and people don't understand how strong Muggsy Bogues was at the time, even though he didn't have the height. But his advantage was the further you were away from the basket, his speed, his quickness, and his size wasn't a liability. And that annoyed the heck out of me when I played against Charlotte and had to bring it up against a smaller, quicker, and a defensive-minded point guard like Muggsy Bogues. Yeah. I still hate to see him coming. I'm like, Muggsy, man, get out of here, man. Get out
so you think Muggsy. He was actually 5'2", 5'3"?
Yeah. I said with insoles in.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing, though, somebody that size could have a lengthy career in the NBA?
Well, look at Spud Webb. Spud Webb, I mean, the same thing.
But Spud wasn't as good as Muggsy.
What? But in a different way, though. Spud was a lot more athletic.
Well, he won the dunk contest.
Yeah, he was more athletic. Made his name. Yeah, and Muggsy was a terror on defense, man.
Yeah,
a terror.
He could play. He's his starter. I mean,
Well, you know what's interesting, Dan, you brought that up too, is that people talk about guys that couldn't play back in the day because of size, like say Steph. We just named two who were smaller that played. Michael Adams back in the day when he played for Denver. Okay, he was small. Okay, it's guys that played back in that time that were smaller, leaner, in a more physical league that still knew how to play because they grew up playing in that era, playing with that physicality, knowing how to use their size. So that's why I laugh at when people say, a Steph couldn't play back in the, late 80s and 90s. I'm like, well, why not? Here's examples of guys that did.
Great to talk to you as always. Thanks for enlightening us. Yes, we
appreciate it. Who you got tonight?
I have the Knicks.
I like that. The Knicks. I'm greedy because I won 7 games, man. I won 6 to 7 games in both series. I was disappointed in OKC and Minnesota game. And the thing about the Minnesota game, I'll say this before we go. People look at Ant and Rand only scoring 21 points compared to the 74 between Shea and Williams. But it wasn't that to me. This is a 2-point game.
Yeah.
You give up 23 turnovers, right, Dan? OKC had 94 possessions. Minnesota only had 85. That's an 11 possession difference in a 2-point game, despite all what was going on. That, to me, when Minnesota gets themselves in trouble, is when they turn the ball over and they lose the possession game.
Good to talk to you.
Always, brother. Enjoy tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. That's Jim Jackson, Fox Turner NBA and college basketball analyst. We'll take a break. Last call for phone calls, what we learn, what's in store tomorrow after this.